Woo! We're live! Hello there, everyone on the internet. My name is Danny Bryant, and welcome to For Fork's Sake Live. We're on a different day of the week. We're also without my fabulous partner. Her name is Dawn Alden. She is in Los Angeles, and she is making some art, taking some class, and so she took this month off, but she will be back next month. I'm joined today by some fabulous ladies. I am lucky enough to all know them personally in real life, and that makes me very happy. Tonight we're going to be talking about young people and body image and kind of body politics, culture, and relationship to the young people in our world today. Everyone here has a lot to say about it. But first we're going to introduce everyone. I'm going to start with this one.
Hey!
Who are you?
I am Sarah Rose Graber, and I'm really thrilled to be here today and be part of this conversation for many reasons. And I'm snacking on things, too. I guess that's part of the rule, is that we have to snack on things. And so I was actually really excited and got some M&Ms. These are crispy M&Ms. So they're kind of like Nestle Crunch Bars, but in the form of M&M. And so that has been my my healthy snack choice today for this.
So delicious. Who else wants to go and introduce themselves?
I'll go. My name is Jen Matthews, and I am super psyched to be here. Really excited about the subject matter and hanging out with you cool women. I've got my little graham cracker snacks right here. Yes, those are Minions. And I'm really, this topic touches home for me. I've got a 7 and a 10-year-old, 2 daughters, and so I'm really excited to jump in on this topic tonight. Thanks for including me.
Awesome. Laura, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. I'm Laura Wood, and I work at Castlewood Treatment Center. I'm the lead therapist, and Castlewood Treatment Center is a place for men and women with eating disorders to come get treatment. So obviously, body image and the body politic are really important to me and hugely important in the work that I do. And this is so perfectly timed because I don't know if people know, but it's Eating Disorder Awareness Week this week. So perfect topic for the week. And so last time I got to be on this lovely discussion, we had to have an entire meal. So I came prepared and ready. I made some homemade chicken tacos tonight, some street corn. I'm rocking out the chips and salsa. And I have some. I'm really into these new coconut strips from Trader Joe's. So
You are up in the game.
That looks good. I'm going to go to your house for dinner.
Full meal going on here.
And Danielle?
Hello.
There's Danielle.
Hi, everyone. I have strep throat at the moment. But I am Danielle. I'm in Chicago with a one-woman show called Body Courage, which I've been working on for the past 3 years now. And I just had an article that was published in BuzzFeed this week for a Body Week about 17 kind of survivor stories of eating disorders. So check that out.
She's fantastic. Her show is one of the best things I saw in 2014. So everyone should make it happen. So I'm going to start us off. So this topic right now is really near and dear to Sarah Rose's heart because we're working on a show that looks a lot at youth identity and how it's being affected just simply by the media, but just as culture in general. So I kind of want to start with what's in our world right now that each of us are kind of connecting with on this topic, and maybe just share a little bit about a story or a happening that really kind of got you thinking about this topic. And I, of course, can always start, but if somebody else had one.
I'll start, actually. I think it's been really fascinating right now I guess sort of as we have been in development for Worthy, and we're trying to collect stories from our community and connect with young people to hear about how the media has been affecting them. A lot of stories about body image have come up as we look at tons of airbrushed images that are everywhere. and we're being sort of oversaturated with idealized beauty and being told culturally what is beautiful and how, of course, we relate to those things in our world. So it's been really fascinating to engage in these conversations with people about how we all think we kind of fit within that. And as having been younger and where I am now and thinking about how I often question kind of where I fit within my world and how much that's changed as I've gotten older, whereas when I was much younger, I felt much more impressionable.
Mm-hmm. I've also been thinking a lot about gender in this topic. It's come up a lot because the production started as very much being a female-centric show, a very kind of feminist perspective on this topic, and but more and more, not just wanting to be inclusive of all genders and having the male perspective, but also like really looking at the spectrum of female gender neutrality and what being androgynous means and how and just how the spectrum of beauty is really sensitive and how a lot of our culture and even our terms for beauty, even the word beautiful, right, or pretty, it's how gendered even that subject matter is and can be really complicated for women who identify on all sorts of spectrums of gender and different types of sexuality. And so I've been thinking a lot about that in young people and how it just must be a very confusing time with being inundated with so many different like mediums of people telling you the same message, but also just all the mixed messaging that is kind of surrounding us at all times. That's what I've been thinking a lot about lately. Who else?
Well, I'll go. So I'm a mental health therapist, right? So I'm, of course, interested in both societally, as a whole, what's affecting body image, but also what's going on in the home and what's going on in family of origin. And so I think with my clients, the thing that I hear about the most is messages that they received from their family, from their mothers and from their fathers, as being essential to the development of how one feels about their body, how one defines beauty. And it's never it's rarely overt messages. It's often the covert ways that plays out. So the amount of time mom spends dieting or spending getting ready, or dad's comments about a movie star or other things that, I think that the parents often, mention it and it's not meant to be hurtful or harmful, but the messages really, really stick deeply. So I'm really interested in how families, also just like family kind of like things like, oh, the Smith family, we have big hips in this family, and then how that sort of gets taken on as a burden by people and can often feed into an eating disorder or low self-esteem or other body image issues. So that's always where my mind is how are we modeling? And I think, of course, media is one way of modeling, but I think in the home is one of the most important places that modeling takes place for positive body image and body love.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah, that's so hard because I think about that a lot. I mean, I've seen a lot in my work with Erasing the Distance, where, a theater company that collects true people stories about different mental health issues, and then we have professional actors that perform them. And body image actually is a subject that comes up quite a lot, even in pieces that don't necessarily present themselves as having dealt with that. And a lot of, to do with self-worth and your own value and how you place that value and calculate that value. And so I've heard a lot of different people's stories through that, and then I have my own journey and my own experiences with my own self-image issues and body issues. And now that my girls are old enough to see me and scrutinize what I do, it's sort of like, do what I say, not as I do, but kids are the opposite. I really try to be really aware of that, and I don't know what kind of effect that has on them. I mean, they've seen me diet, they've seen me do so. I'm always very clear that I'm doing it for my health. I'm diabetic. I need to watch what I eat. I need to be careful about my weight because of these things, not because I want to be a supermodel or because I don't like the way I look. I try to be very careful with my wording, and always encourage them to just eat lots of different things. And we're already starting to enter into that phase. Very little so far of so-and-so called me fat, or my teeth don't look like this person at school's teeth. I don't like to smile. I like to keep my mouth closed. Or my hair, it doesn't have curl like this person's. If it just had curl like this person's, life would be so much better. We're just starting to enter into that. And it is an enormous responsibility, particularly when you feel like you don't have a handle on it yourself, to realize that there are these two small humans that are watching everything you do and every response you give them, and they are going to internalize that and keep it with them and carry it with them, potentially even for years. It's a little daunting. It's something that's always on my mind and my husband's mind too, in our household.
Yeah. Well,
it's fascinating to think so much about kind of that coming back to identity, right? How do we fit in the scheme of things? How much is is it us looking for where we fit within the family dynamic or in our friend circles or in public settings at school? And those different kind of hierarchies or just social structures that then influence the way we see ourselves.
Totally.
I think it does. I don't know. Can you all hear me on this thing? Okay. I think it does start in the home. I do a lot of interviews, as well as adults, for my show, which is all documentary based. So Erasing the Distance, I'm definitely a fan of the work that you all do. But I think a lot of the kids that I interview, I ask them, how do you feel about your body, and whether they've been bullied. It's based on what other students have done to them. There's a little girl that I portray who's from the Chatham neighborhood here in Chicago, and she experienced a lot of bullying. But the part of the interview that's not part of what I perform, but we will her seeing her mom and watching her mom, and her mom does not like her own body. So it's tough. I know that as a personal note, like, it started for me in the home as well as in school, of realizing what my body was and realizing that it was different. But it is tough. It really is tough, and it is, because I'm not a professional in this, I'm just an actor, is how do we successfully create programs in schools to allow kids to learn to love their bodies depending on how different they may be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. Mm-hmm. And I'm also interested in, we're exploring this a little bit in Worthy, is there a shift that happens as well? Like the Run Like a Girl campaign was a video that we saw months ago, and then kind of had a resurgence in around Super Bowl time. Did everybody see that?
Yeah.
Campaign? So that really the kind of messaging being like, when they're real little, when there seems to be a lack of self-consciousness, and then something kind of shifts. And is it puberty, or is it the messages kept catching up with them, or are they paying more attention? Like, what is that shift, and is it about like having that programming in the school right around that time so that we're there to support them in that, or is it something totally different and totally separate because if it is more at home, then there needs to be more family programming as opposed to it all happening outside of the home?
Yeah, I think we know with all types of programs that are about prevention, whether it's about body image, home violence, safety, whatever, across the board, like, we find, like, if you can't get the intervention into the home, it's a lot harder for things to have some staying power. That doesn't mean seeds aren't being planted and that it's a waste of time, but it's just awfully hard for kids, I think, if the messages at home are totally different than what you're hearing at school. And so I really think you have to get entire families involved in the types of programming that's involved. I mean, obviously, as a drama therapist, I feel like theater is a perfect venue to do that, to involve the whole family, either as witnesses, audience members, or participants.
Mm-hmm.
I then find myself also asking questions about the cultural elements of that too. That it's so trying to create discourse within the school community, but also recognizing the importance of creating discourse within the family home, but then also an awareness of cultural identity and how there's a certain different value systems and different definitions and a vocabulary for how those things are, how body image is talked about. And so where is that balance between creating a sense of common language, but also recognizing inherent differences between backgrounds?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. It speaks to me of intent and process of where to begin, because is it like trying to impart the message, and at what age of embracing different body types, different body looks, different, trying to combat a lot of the images that they're going to get on a daily basis just from, society, from the media, that if you look a certain way, then you have more value. So trying to talk louder than those voices, or at least be heard against those voices, with, other messaging about how, people of all different types, body and otherwise, that their self-worth, no matter, what type of body you have. That's like one aspect, but then another aspect to me, I think, is maybe approaching them and asking, instead of trying to combat potentially negative messaging with equally loud, what we deem positive messaging, which may not be interpreted that way by them, do we start by asking them, how did they feel about their bodies? What do they like? What do they not wear? And then where does that journey start? Where should it start from? Because I think if we line up, 10, 13-year-old girls and ask each of them what's weighing on their minds, or how do they feel about their body image, and what do they feel like their body is great, what's great about it, not so great about it, they would probably have 10 different answers. So it's this big question for me of where do you even begin the conversation?
Yeah,
and how?
I think that's a really important piece. I think about that a lot, because I think also it's not just about body image, like in my opinion, which is that we don't teach some of these basic emotional skills within our school system. So we don't teach vulnerability, we don't teach compassion, or there's not an emphasis on those things, identifying feelings and emotions. So I think the problem is that I think a lot of the deficits that happen at the bottom of the pyramid, it ends up showing up later as negative body image or low self-confidence. But if we were teaching the fundamental skills that would be needed to scaffold later on to be able to build up to positive body image, self-confidence, all of those other pieces. I mean, I just think, again, just like an eating disorder is always a manifestation of something else going on, I think our need to control our bodies and our images is a manifestation of a deficit of all of those other skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Heck yeah.
There was also Renee Engelin from Northwestern University, who works in the it was in the gender studies department, wasn't it? And she had made such an interesting point that's really stuck with me in relationship to how people think about their bodies, and so many kind of discrepancies around negative talk around people's bodies had to do with judgments placed upon how it might look and definitions of beauty, when she was making a point about switching our thinking into activating those parts of our body. What does our body actually do? So, your thighs are too big, but is it because they're really strong and it makes you a really good runner and you can jump really high? And Is it the things that are being picked at when looking at them in terms of their actual purpose, that your body as an amazing tool, that became a really important way to help people rethink about the negative talk about their bodies.
Yeah. And it also makes me, when I connect to, I lost my train of thought. It was really good. It was a really good statement.
Does it have to do with bodies?
No,
and
it was
their roles?
connecting back to the work that, so we in classrooms that we did around this topic. So doing research for Worthy and trying to get kids to talk about like stereotypes or misconceptions about young people, specifically whatever grade they were. So what's a misconception about a 6th grader? And then we're addicted to our phones. And then it would get to, well, what's a misconception of 6th grade boys? Oh, that they're smelly and that they like sports. And then what's a misconception about girls? Oh, well, they love pink and that they...
And Starbucks.
And Starbucks.
That was one that came up.
I'm obsessed with Starbucks. But how tentative young people were to even comment out loud in front of their peers when it was facilitated by an adult about appearance or about body. Like, I don't think we got anything of like, a misconception is about girls is that they're obsessed with their weight, or that boys, you know, need to be muscly. Like, there seemed to be a lack of conversation. And of course they're kids, they're 6th graders, and that's more of, and they're kind of getting to know their bodies in that way. But I always, kind of picking up on what Jen was saying, I always want to be able to like dig in with young people about like, no, but what are you thinking about your body and body image, and as opposed to me kind of making assumptions about what I think young people are going through, because all I can also do is like compare my own experience now, you know, 20-something years ago, and that was very, you know, for me, that's all I thought about was my body and how I didn't like it. So is that still happening, or are we pushing towards something that's a little more, I don't know, progressive or not progressive? That wasn't a question.
It's hard in that group dynamic too, because like even if I'm talking to my older daughter about something and she won't even want to discuss something like in front of her sister, she'll be like, can I talk with you privately about this? And we'll go and we'll talk, and she'll say things like, and I know when I was that age, like if I would have been put in any sort of group environment, and of course I was socially a lot and in health class and stuff like that, I would have never brought up, to me it would be like advertising my insecurities. If I would say something that I'm feeling vulnerable about out loud to a group of people, then that's just handing them a weapon that, you know, I mean, it's like making myself extra visible, all of my flaws. So it's like the one thing that I would never talk about, you know, and as an adult I'm still the same way, you know, it's like you don't want to acknowledge the things that cause you the most pain. So I think that's part of the challenge, because there's not as much opportunity in a school environment or in a, you know, social services environment outside of individualized therapy to have that one-on-one. There's a lot more opportunity to do that at home, and I try to do it as often as I can with both my daughters instead of just addressing them as this group, like, okay, you girls. It's like, no, you know, I have a 7-year-old and she's completely different than the 10-year-old, and let's have conversations with both of them and see what's on their mind, and they're much more apt to open up to me when it's just the two of them. So that's possibly one aspect, because I don't know, I doubt, I'm sure that there are kids in 6th grade that haven't even thought about it, and I'm sure there's kids in 6th grade that are obsessing about it, and I don't know that they'd feel comfortable emerging in that type of forum. I wouldn't have at that age.
Yeah. Right. I think that goes to the point I was making earlier, which is that, again, like, young people, I think, don't feel safe to open up because we're not teaching. There's not an emphasis on empathy, and there's not an emphasis on mentalization, and there's not an emphasis on compassion, you know, towards self or others. And like, to me, that's the programming that's really missing. That's not allowing people to feel safe enough to open up, or to go to a mentor for help, or a parent for help even, you know, because the deficit is in these basic skills that scaffold someone into being able to reach out for support or help or to speak to their experience. I mean, kids at that age are, they're having, even putting some of those thoughts and feelings into statements and into their cognition is already hard as is, given where they are, sort of developmentally. So then you take away the skill set that they would need to be able to do it, or we're not finding ways to encourage that or create it. And I just think that, now we've got an epidemic of low self-esteem, overcompensation, and bad body image when it's about, these other deep things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Oh no, it's okay.
Get it?
I do agree with what Jen said, because a lot of the interviews that I do with children and teens, when the parent is in the room, that's a whole different story, and then when I get them by themselves, that's a whole different situation as well too. And it really is kind of the level of how comfortable they feel. But another thing I was going to say is it depends on if we are bringing these programs into schools. Some schools don't have the funding for things like this. I mean, if you're talking about an underserved community, their focus may be based on trying to get better textbooks rather than dealing with a class to help kids with body image. So my whole interest with this show that I'm doing is, how do I bring this show to kids that are in those underserved communities that they don't have an outlet at all, in the communities that are food deserts, in the communities where there may be danger to get from home to school. And how do we bring this knowledge to those kids? I think that's probably my biggest question, because I've done a lot of kind of talks with people, and I think it's really important, to include this in the school system as well as getting back to basics with the parents, because I think that's a huge step in this. But those kids that don't have opportunity, that don't have any life chances, how do we let them know about all of this?
Yeah. Well, and it's my kind of desire to want to find a way that how young people themselves can be empowered to speak on this on a certain platform, because they're so connected via different outlets, is because there has been kind of an uptick in a feminist movement and lots of other gendered areas of with toys, like boys and girls toys, or clothing, or video games, or there have been these little exciting hurrah movements that have gone viral that sometimes are often started by the young people themselves. And so just in the back of my mind, I linger could there potentially be a powerful shift in if the education started and it was actually the young people who were kind of rallying together to take a stand against this, as opposed to, which sometimes it often feels like, a very kind of whitewashed version of what body image and what eating disorders look like, leave out whole communities all the time. And if there's a way for us to empower the young people themselves to start the movement, would that shift anything? An idea.
There's so much interesting power that comes across with, when a young person is sort of leading that march, and yet it's up to the adult figures to provide the support for those things to happen. Of how do they get the camera in their hand to make that video? How do they get the information and knowledge to get some of those things posted online, to have a space to hold a meeting, to encourage them and facilitate those opportunities? And it's actually really timely right now with the Illinois Arts Council just sent out a massive email about a standstill right now due to budget cuts that are in talks, and it's taking out all of these nothing's been officially done yet, but there's all these conversations about cutting programs that are already in place that are at least providing some outlets toward trying to support the kinds of conversation we're even having right now. But that this is something that becomes larger on a federal level too, and in terms of politics and our government structure of where funding is going to support these conversations. So how do those things happen when there's no monetary support or time that can create space for these opportunities to arise?
That makes me think of a good question I would like to ask everyone. Because on a government level, if there's been any kind of a message across the board the past couple years, it's about like healthy and getting healthy, and the focus is trying to get kids to get healthy. And I'm curious, is that a good thing? Is that delivering the right message? Is it being done in a way where kids who do have kind of low self-esteem or have genetic things that are up against them, that the kind of what healthy means, is that always helpful, or can it also be hurtful? What do you guys think about that?
I think it depends, because when I was growing up, I mean, we didn't even have cable, so it was just kind of like PBS, and that was it. And I think the influx of the media and social media, like Fitspirations on Instagram and all of these different hashtags, can be dangerous, because kids nowadays, they can get anything on an instant, whether it's on their so great, but it's just, how is that message coming across? Are they seeing people that look like them that are eating well, or are they seeing people that are kind of unrealistic images that they can't attain because they're so young, you know? So it depends on how it's being shown to them.
Yeah, I think the whole definition and wording of healthy, I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction, but people's definition, and by people I really mean, like, you know, the medical community and the messages that they send us, and you need to eat this amount of vegetables and this amount of fruits and this percentage of this, or you're failing. I mean, that's really how it sort of feels. Like, you need to do this or you fail. You failed at it. You're not healthy. So now you're not healthy and your thighs still jiggle in gym. You're fucked. You know, it's like there's nowhere to win. You know, I mean, if we could expand the definition of what it means to be healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, and feel good in your skin, and define that as what healthy means, and then eventually, hopefully by extension, what beauty feels like, that would be a real step in the right direction. But even like in schools, you know, or you go to doctors and they're reading down a list of, are you doing this, this, and this? Well, then you're not healthy. You're a failure. You know, you go to health class, and if you're not eating out of each of the food groups in the right percentages, then you fail. If you're not within the BMI for your height, you fail. You know, even though it's just, it puts, I think, almost more pressure in a lot of ways. Like, okay, I'm you know, don't like what my hair does, and I don't feel comfortable in my body, and now I'm also going to die because I'm not eating exactly what I'm supposed to eat every day. It's just, I don't know. I have a problem with it. That's the problem I have with it, is the narrow definition of what healthy is, and the message that that's sending to our youth, to everyone, but particularly our youth.
Right. Jen, I think you make a really good point in that, and what you're also talking about is that the messages are shame-based. So when it's not only a narrow context, it's shame being involved, and meaning that somebody is defective or not good enough in some way. And shame is what leads to self-hate, and shame and self-hate are at the root of lack of self-confidence, lack of self-love and appreciation, which leads people to need to find compensatory behaviors to fill the deficit that they feel inside. And so I think that that's right. I think it's you know, it is important to have certain food groups that we eat from, and it's important to exercise and be in our body, not only for a physical perspective, but a mental perspective. But it's how we message the material, I think, and that it comes from a place of support and understanding multicultural perspectives. I mean, just speaking to having access to all of the food groups. I mean, fresh produce is extraordinarily expensive, and so when we're talking about low, you know, SES communities, I mean, it's, we're not taking in the perspective, people's backgrounds and what they're coming from and their economic status and their access to these kinds of things. So I think it's more sensitivity around that, and it's also not coming with those messages from a shame-based place.
Yeah. There's clearly something that needs to be done. So, but it's about like, what are those first steps? And I think this is the first time all of us have been like theater practitioners in some particular way. So I'm curious, let's talk a little bit about that, about our specific medium, and maybe how the work we're currently doing we think can translate to forward motion, or perhaps even other work by other folks that we've seen that's been really powerful or effective. I would be interested to know, because that seems like something we can do, right? We can tell those stories that aren't being told for young people that we have access to. That's something we can do. So, what do you guys think about that? What about the work Erasing the Distance is doing, Jen? I've always had a dream that someday we would do a.
I know. It'd be so awesome. It's a dream I share. Well, I think what I have witnessed just in general across the board, and we don't do as many stories that specifically deal with body image and eating disorders as I personally would like, because it's
the mental health work that you guys are doing in general.
Yeah, well, we do all that, any kind of mental health issues, and what I think is so empowering about it is that we take people's real stories, and then as actors we dramatize them, but with their words. So it's just an actor standing up and delivering a monologue of someone's story. So you could have 6 different stories about anorexia or bipolar disorder, or and I mean a wide range, and they will be 6 completely different stories from 6 completely different people. There might be like some common elements that you could identify, but it's not like when we go into schools a lot, we hear from the students a lot, and they're always so chatty afterwards, or almost always, which is so gratifying. They're excited because we didn't go in and lecture them. It didn't feel like an after-school special. We are flawed, messy people who are coming in and telling them what we've experienced and what we felt and where we are now. And there's things don't get wrapped up with a bow. Things don't, some of these people aren't even necessarily very likable. I mean, it's a wide range of the human gamut. And what I think is so powerful about that is that feels empowering to someone who is sitting in the audience and has never once spoken up and said, I feel that way too, because they've never had any way to even do it. They don't even know how to identify it. They don't know how to give voice to it. They might not even realize themselves that that's the part of them that's been feeling empty or unheard or neglected until they saw another human being stand up. And in most other forums, that just doesn't happen. I mean, when you're hanging out at your girlfriend's house, you might talk about some heavy things, but it's going to be pretty rare that someone's going to stand up and basically tell you where their hurt lies, or what their hurt even is, or identify something that has really been weighing on them, or a journey that they've gone through. And having that experience and knowing that the stories and the words, because we keep every single word the same, we don't collect stories and then reframe them into something that sounds dramatically more powerful. We use these people's real words, and we're very clear about that, and I think that it has a huge impact on people who may have never had an experience, a human experience like that before. It's something that is different than reading about something in a book, or hearing about it in a lecture, or seeing it dramatized on a Lifetime, made-for-TV movie. And I'm not mocking any of those forums. They're all valuable. But there's something about seeing something presented live and real and raw in front of you that elicits an immediate guttural reaction in a lot of people that no other form can do.
Amen. Give us all the money to do it.
There's
Yeah.
something great about just I mean, we go to the theater and we can watch a story, and even not just as a passive viewer, as an active viewer, be able to look at something where we can empathize with a character, but can still look at it objectively. And I think that becomes a really powerful form in terms of connecting with people and engaging people in conversations, or making part of that story really resonate for someone and change someone's life, even by being so moved because they're watching something that they can connect to in a way that gives them enough distance to be able to comment on it for themselves. I also think, not just as a theater practitioner, as a performer, as a director in terms of crafting stories, but as an educator as well, so much of theater work is having people learn how to work with what their tools are, and owning their body and owning their voice, and learning how to express themselves, how to take on different types of characters by transforming their body, changing their posture, their gestures, their stance, to take on something different, and celebrating what it means to not just be yourself, but to also be able to stretch all those different parts of yourself to take on so many different things, to be versatile, and to explore what it means to express different types of emotions, and to experience what that feels like, and relating it back to your own life too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love what you all are saying, because it's all of the principles of which drama therapy is constructed on, right? That theater is inherently healing. You know, the Greeks would come together to watch comedies and tragedies and have a community, and so the ritual within theater is healing. The idea that we all play a role in our life, and that theater gives us the opportunity to take on role and to say, ah, that's me, and then the minute it's too much, we can say, oh, that's not me, right? And so playing that discrepancy of it's me, but it's not me, and I love what you were saying about the distance, right? So that's, you know, Chef talks about aesthetic distance, and that distancing from something of me and not me gives us space to be able to begin to move closer to roles that we might be able to inhabit, and things that will help us then internalize them, so we can show up in the world in a more diverse way, you know, taking on more roles, expanding our role profile. And so I just think that it's why I, you know, became a drama therapist, is because, you know, throughout history, storytelling and theater is inherently healing. And the wonderful things that we all sort of love about the theater beautifully lend themselves to helping people tell their stories and heal through telling their stories.
Huh. And one of my favorite parts of the kind of work that we've really ended up stumbling into is what a healing experience it's for our actors as well to go through this type of work. And Danielle, maybe you could speak to that a little bit about, you know, what it's like for you to actually tell your own story or tell other people's stories, and it actually in turn becomes a more healing experience for you and your own body image. Like I know 100% that for me, anytime I've chosen to kind of tell my own personal story as a way to try to connect to other people, it's just kind of the karmic ramifications, the laws of reciprocation. I've always had a very healing experience from that. So it's one thing also to have why it's important to tell these stories in the kind of field that we're in, because we know that like media and television and movies, it's a very superficial kind of art form, but so is the theater. I mean, very much, there's still a lot of stigma, and so also just letting actors be themselves and kind of tell those stories, I even think is for our entire theater community in itself is a healing process in a way.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that documentary theater is genres in theater, because it is taking real life stories and then bringing them to the stage, especially with the topics of body image was so. I started this project to start a positive conversation about body image in the theater because I realized no one was talking about this at all, especially in New York. So I moved to Chicago with hopes that I would find some people like you all. But the thing is, it is incredibly healing. They're in the audience. That's another level too, and it leaves you very vulnerable as the actor because you want to tell their story right, you want to do them, and it's huge. I mean, there was a story that I told with a woman that I actually in the show, but she was a very close friend of mine, and during the interview, I found out that she was anorexic, and I had no idea. And this is someone that I had worked with for months, and I did shows with, and had absolutely no idea, and I wanted to share that story. And when she came with friends, and it was a very moving performance because it was the first time anyone had heard that story. So for me, the actor, it is tough because I have to make sure that honor them as well as I make theater that is interesting for the audience as well. So it is a fine line because I never want to abuse someone's story, because the thing is I see that a lot in theater where it's like somebody will interview someone and then their story won't be told in the exact way. And I do a lot of theater that's similar to Lauren, the fact that, like, you know, you take the interviews and everything is word for word verbatim. And that's my intention, is not to create any kind of dishonesty when I'm telling these stories. So it is a fine line. But I think when you successfully do it, it is so rewarding because it's healing for not only myself, who's gone through so many body image things in my life, it's also healing for them to now say, okay, my story is out there and now I need help. And she ended up seeking.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also something so cool about.
So to know that I could be a part of that really was.
Danielle, you're cutting out just a teeny tiny bit.
Oh, okay.
We caught most of it, I swear.
Okay.
I was going to tap into just, I loved so much of what you were just sharing, Danielle, and it made me think about just how powerful theater can be in terms of engaging people in discourse. And it made me think about our production of Kitchen, which was a show that we did. It was created by Danny and a devised piece that came in conjunction with Victory Gardens for a special connection to a production they were doing called The Whale. And it was performed there, and it was just amazing to do this body image-based play and what it meant for an audience to hear this story and immediately want to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
That there's so many stories that get kind of put under, just kind of swept under the rug, and by just putting it out there, people weren't talking about this or sharing it with anybody, and suddenly everyone was coming up to us to tell us their story and to share their experience, and people in tears and people who were just so emotionally rocked by what it meant to see a story that they had in their own closet of skeletons that they saw on stage, and suddenly felt like, now I can tell my story because you opened the door for me.
It's the number one thing I say over and over, that there is no place for people to talk about this subject.
Yeah.
I mean, they could, unless they're in therapy or unless they're at some sort of, you know, a branded corporate dieting club where you meet once a week and talk about tips. You know what I mean? Like, there's no very kind of open, communal, natural discourse that's happening. And the reason that I wanted to make Kitchen is because I would get really mad that people would portray BED, binge eating disorder, in a comical light in all types of media. Like, Your Feelings was hilarious and had been for all of time, but that it was a very serious, kind of traumatizing experience. And nobody was telling that story, and we did, and then all people wanted to do was talk about it. So it's just, we need more.
Yeah, we definitely need more. And the thing is, everyone has a body image. And I think that's why this theater is so relevant, especially today, because, and especially this topic, because everyone has something that they have to say in regards to how they view themselves or how others may view them, especially in terms of like young body image. And I think that's why this topic is so crucial, especially right now, because there's kind of this growing media-driven thing that's happening on Twitter and Facebook where plus size models are getting attention. Now, and I put that in huge. A lot of these women are like size 8, 10, but but that's fine. And what does it? I mean, I can go on like literally for 4 to 5 minutes about what does plus size actually mean, because that's a piece actually in my show, but we're not here for that right now. But yeah, no, I think this topic is so important in theater because theater, it's not like watching something on TV. You're in a room with all these other people, knee to knee, and it is a very visceral experience, and you can't run away from it. You can change the channel, but you can't run away from theater. So I think it's so important to have these topics talked about.
I'm glad we're in agreement. So, believe it or not, our hour's almost up. Can you believe it? Wham, bam.
Oh, it's so fast.
It's so fast. So I guess on our way out, I don't know if there's any action steps for us to do because we're already doing the work. But I don't know. Let's all share, I guess, one nugget that has stuck out from this conversation that's going to move us personally forward as we continue on our work in this way.
There was something that Laura said that well, there were many things that were said by everyone that I really appreciated, but I really have been thinking still about what Laura said about how the schools aren't necessarily teaching coping mechanisms or emotional skill building as much as there's a focus just on the academics and course curriculum. And it makes me think about ways that I can kind of continue to engage with young people thinking about that and how there are ways for us to engage with our community beyond just the school environment, but just engaging with our community on that level as well. And I think it takes us sort of being the models in that, but also creating spaces where that conversation can open up and where that kind of growth can happen.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that because I just think it's so true. I mean, like, what makes theater magical is that it's the space for feelings. I mean, that's what drives a good scene, right? Is that the feelings are notched up to a 10, you know, and that the moment is so hot. And so it's a great venue to fill the gap for folks who aren't getting, because, you know, like in my dream world, you take feelings class just the same as you take math class and English class and everything else, and it's written into the curriculum, and everybody does feelings class, you know, kindergarten through 12th grade, and I think we'd be a far healthier community and society. But that's not going to happen. So the good news is that's a wonderful space for theater, because theater is a world of feelings and roles. And change and transformation. And yeah, I mean, I'm not like there's, you know, everybody had such good and interesting things to say. I think what I'm taking away is, what I'm fascinated by is that, you know, I am in touch with a number of people who are doing this, like this type of work in different places, but there's no streamlined space for it. Like this is one of the only spaces, like Danny, this conversations that take place, and I just like, it's hard because I think things need to happen in grassroots efforts, but like I just think about how much skill and tool and information that everybody has, and like I think I'm taking away like, all right, well, what needs to be the conference for, you know, like perhaps it's theater for body image and eating disorders and whatever. I mean, like what's that needs to happen that's about people, both, you know, people working in the creative arts therapies and people who are theater practitioners, specifically for theater, you know, like it's too much if we bring in art and poetry and music. We need all of those things, but like I think theater, both drama therapists and theater artists and directors need a space where we can collaborate specifically around work that's happening around the body. That's what I'm taking away. My 10-year project or something.
Worthy extra programming.
Yeah, or we're just in. So you let us know when you want to start planning, and we'll help plan you.
You come
We'll
and
help plan
we'll
you.
make this thing happen.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm continuing, yes, and what made me think about connecting back to Worthy is also that how many parents are going to see the show. And I think sometimes I get caught up in theater for young audiences focusing so much on the young people themselves, but we always say, and the adults in their lives. And so I'm really now just kind of thinking a little bit about, the script's not done, but making sure that parents as well are going to leave the show with a feeling of seeing how much they affect everything, the children and all of it. So that's sticking with me right now, and then I'm going to move into the next couple days chewing on that before my final rehearsal draft is due on Sunday.
Yeah,
Jen,
building on that, Danny, I think I'm going to be thinking more about how to maximize that connection between the actors and the audience, so that when people do feel moved, they don't then leave that space having no idea of what to do with those emotions. That's what I think taking away from the things that I was hearing, is that I would like to explore even more how to strengthen that connection between the actors and the audience, so that people can leave feeling empowered, and there's tools that we can give them, and it's not just about providing entertainment or giving them, an experience, but then letting them, opening the circles so they then can also participate in that. Like, my experience has been that stories beget stories, and when you hear somebody share their story, a lot of people respond by wanting to then share their own, but there isn't always any way to do so, and people leave sometimes feeling flummoxed and sort of boxed in, and like sort of like they've been thwarted before they've even had a chance to then decide what they need to do with those feelings and how to then put that out into the community, so that we can keep it going, like Laura said, about more of a grassroots type of feel. I love that. So that's what I'm sort of ruminating on right now, is how to then empower people to leave that theatrical experience and go out and make a difference in their community and their world, and then have that hopefully continue on.
Totally. Ms. D, any?
Yeah, I think I'm just really thinking, how can I help the children and teenagers in underserved communities? And I think a lot of that has to do with volunteering, and just putting it out on the table first, and letting those schools know that, hey, I will work for free, but this is a really important topic for me, and I feel like it would be good to have it. And how can I begin to have that kind of correlation there between theater and students that are in those underprivileged communities? Also, how can we get some sort of a conference? Because I feel like an important topic, and there's so many people, there's so many people nationwide that are talking about this whole thing on body image, and how do we all get together in a room to discuss this even further? Because yes, this is a grassroots movement, but there are so many people nationwide. I'm just thinking about just even the bloggers that I know, Marie Denis. There's a woman who has a blog called Plus Size Princess, Garner Stott. Like, there's so many women and men that are dealing with, because I feel like men need to be in this convo too. But how do we begin to all come together and discuss?
I love it.
All right,
I'm
doing the conference. That's it. I'm planning it.
Doing it. We're there.
Love it. Tell me when and where.
Yeah,
Yes.
just tell us what tomorrow. We're on it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Our final little nuggets is anybody who wants to pitch anything that they're working on. We've kind of organically talked about what we're working on, but if we have anything kind of in the immediate coming up that we want to pitch, go for it.
Well, Erasing the Distance has our annual gala, so it's coming up in 2 weeks. It's on March 14th. It's on a Saturday night. It's a really fun event. I'm performing. If you want to come check it out, we have artist discounted tickets. You can find out more info at our website, erasingthedistance.org.
Yeah.
A little pitch.
Worthy goes into previews April 14th, and we run until mid-May. Matinees, weekend shows. It's just going to be fan-looking-tastic.
Yeah, and so much of what we've been talking about. So this is so unbelievably relevant. I think it'll be really satisfying based on this conversation, too, to see the production, because it has a lot of responses to some of what we've been asking questions about.
Mm-hmm. What's going on with Body Courage?
I'd say take a look at my article on BuzzFeed, BuzzFeed.com/bodyweek. I'm really excited about it. It's under the 17 survival stories of eating disorders. Carolyn Rostein from New York compiled all the stories together and selected one of my stories, so that was awesome. And I'll be coming at you soon with Body Courage. We just finished the one night only event, but some theater companies are interested. So check my blog, bodycourage.com, for more details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you working on?
So I just received a generous grant from the Drama Therapy Fund for my theater project, Recovery Through Performance. So I work with men and women who are post-treatment. So we know, this is also my dissertation work, that the 6 to 12 months post-treatment is the highest time for relapse of an eating disorder. And so I'm using drama therapy as an opportunity to fill that gap so people can work on putting together a performance about recovery, and it being a supportive place to keep people out of their behaviors and a place to come to the table and stay inspired around recovery. So we did our first production in November, and our next one's coming up in July.
Yeah. Cool. Ooh, I might have to.
Yeah.
Is it open performances?
Yeah, it was amazing. We do it here in St. Louis. We had 120 people at our performance, and it's all folks in recovery, and it's many of them have never done a play before, and so it's totally affirming and exciting for them to get up and perform.
St. Louis is only 4 hours away from Chicago.
Road trip.
Only
That's
4
easy.
Road trip.
I love it. Well, you
Cool.
guys, it's once again been so gratifying, and just continuing to build community around this topic in whatever way we can is so important. So I thank you so much for making the time. We're going to say goodbye now, but we'll see everybody soon. And my lady friends, you don't have to get off right now. I'm just stopping.